I'm just grateful that I was able to experience what I have. You know, if I were to check off my bucket list, I've played with a major symphony orchestra. I've recorded in a studio. I've gone on tour playing with bands. You know, these are all things that I found important in my youth, and I'm okay. I've checked it off, and now I'm ready to explore a new path and new experiences.
I'm delighted to be speaking with Jason Park, trumpeter, arts administrator, and chef. He spent over 20 years working as a chef while also performing and teaching the trumpet. If you're in the classical music scene in the Bay Area, you've probably worked with Jason or heard him play. He's currently the program administrator for the San Francisco Boys Chorus, trumpeter for the San Francisco Playhouse, and a freelance stage manager and chef. Jason has had a variety of past job titles like restaurant manager, bartender, music arranger, and many more. He also plays the flute and French horn. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
We were introduced to each other probably over a decade ago now by pianist Frank Johnson, who put together a concert of Toru Takemitsu's songs, and one of them was scored for voice and trumpet. You've been part of the Bay Area music scene for a long time now. How did you start and establish a reputation over time?
Well, I'm originally from Oahu, Hawaii, and I moved here to San Francisco in 1999, leaving college to explore the real world, you know, the big mainland where more opportunities are available. And it was the best decision I made. Definitely more opportunity, lots of competition at the same time too. And I didn't get started in the music scene here for at least a couple years after moving, maybe 2001, because I took a small break from playing and really needed money to pay the rent. So thankfully I had skills from working in restaurants and bars in Hawaii, which I landed a job pretty quick working in hotels, and sort of took 2 years off from the trumpet really to explore and see if this is the career path that I want to go down. You know, do I want to open my own restaurant one day? And so within those 2 years, I worked at a few places, some really great places, and learned a lot, climbed up through the chain, and ended up managing a restaurant and a bar. And after a little while, I started meeting some musicians in town and started picking up the trumpet again and casually moving into gigs. And then, before you know it, I am getting calls for gigs. All of a sudden, it's starting to conflict with my paid job, you know, because a lot of the hotels and restaurants require night shifts, weekends, and so does music. So it was a really tricky balance at first, and hard to make decisions because I loved both worlds so much and really wanted to learn skills in the restaurant industry and build that career up. It was actually my backup plan, just in case. I'm sure a lot of musicians know you've got to think about a backup plan because it's so tough to make it full-time in music and teaching. At some point, I picked up a job at this great hospice called My Tree, where I stayed for 13 years. Cooking and then moving up into this sous chef position. And that was the perfect balance because I was able to cook in the morning and then do teaching and gigs in the afternoon and evenings. It meant I was working a lot constantly, like almost 7 days a week, every week. But I was doing what I loved, and I didn't really think of it as a burden or an inconvenience. I enjoyed everything. I had very little free time, but I was doing what I loved, and I was happy with that.
I so appreciate this transparent view into what the days and weeks look like. And you truly are an ampersand. You said you love both worlds. Let's go back even a little further in history. I'm thinking, small Jason in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Thinking back to childhood, what was your early interest in the worlds of food and music?
Well, as a child of Asian descent, my parents really tried to instill the importance of studying hard, getting that big paying job, doing something important like a doctor or a lawyer or a police investigator. I remember my mom telling me once, you should be a police investigator. And sometime around 7th grade, I picked up the trumpet. And by high school, I knew that that's what I really wanted to focus on, what I was really enjoying. I was never a very good student. And it wasn't because I was a bad student or a bad learner. I just was lazy and I didn't want to study things that didn't interest me. But with that influence from my parents, it made it tough telling them at some point what my college focus was going to be. When I announced that it's going to be music, I remember hearing the words starving musician, something, something, and how are you going to make a living? And I was so driven and so confident that I would make that work no matter what it took. I was going to make it work, and I'm going to practice, I'm going to audition, and I'm going to land that big job, all the same dreams that musicians have. I had these huge dreams, of course. I wanted to be a principal trumpeter for a world-renowned orchestra, and or maybe the conductor of one of these orchestras, and huge dreams, which at the time that's what really was driving me, and I was confident it was all going to happen. As the years progressed, I learned it's competitive. It's not that easy. And, as much as I was putting into it, I took a lot of auditions, did all of that, put myself into a little bit of debt with the dream of doing this. Those auditions cost a lot of money. You have to get a hotel, travel, and there's no guarantee that you're going to land that job. Mm-hmm. So along the way, I had to change my priorities and had to change my drive and dreams and all of that. And somewhere, maybe it was the seeds that my parents had left in my brain about, have a backup plan. But I did sort of think about that too. When I first started all of my jobs back in the restaurant industry, I started as a valet and then a busboy, moved into a server and then bartender and then eventually manager. All of those years, I had something in my mind that was driving me to learn the skills, have my backup in something that I'm passionate about, just in case. So for many years, I lived this life of the dream of my music career taking off. And then also, wow, I want to open a restaurant. And those two major things are really hard to balance sometimes because both take a lot of time and devotion and energy. It was really tough choosing. It still is. Mm-hmm. Throughout my whole life, I've sort of gone back and forth. I put more focus into either cooking or restaurants, and then I'd maybe try the music scene, full time for a bit, then try both of them and get exhausted because I'm spread too thin. So it's a tough balance. And, but I'm grateful for all the experiences I've had. Something in my mind was shaping that, saying that you need to do this. I'm self-taught in cooking as well as music. I started at least 2 or 3 years on the trumpet on my own. Wow. Researching how to play this thing, listening to recordings, and, then I started taking lessons and it took off from there. But so I'm pretty proud that I have been able to self-teach because that's what really prepared me for where I am today.
And you model a life that I think a lot of people aspire to. I think you said something really important around how hard it is to be at the top of the music industry. There just isn't a lot of room at the top. There are only a number of top orchestras in the world. But there is another life that you are modeling where you get to play a variety of music and you get to be really well known in the Bay Area. Like, oh yeah, Jason Park, the trumpeter. And you get to do this other thing that you love. And it's also not too late to think about opening your restaurant. I mean, life is long.
No, definitely not too late. I would like to say that more recently I've come to realize that, I've changed my goals in life. My desires are different now, and I'm grateful for it. These fields that I decided to choose are really tough, both of them individually, and then to try and do both. I've had to face a lot of disappointment, a lot of realizations that, hey, let's be realistic here. There's both of these wonderful worlds, but really, do I need to choose one? This is what I'm still battling with. Do I need to choose one? But with the way life is now, it's like I said, I think I've found a pretty good balance, and all of my years of event planning, catering, working for events, it's now coming around in another circle where I'm actually able to apply this to my program management job with the chorus. I'm finding a lot of skills transferred, and I'm so grateful that I put the effort into, mindfully learning that along my journey. I'm just grateful that I was able to experience what I have. If I were to check off my bucket list, I've played with a major symphony orchestra. I've recorded in a studio. I've gone on tour playing with bands. These are all things that I found important in my youth, and I'm okay. I've checked it off, and now I'm ready to explore a new path and new experiences.
Yeah. You are well-versed in a number of different genres: classical, musical theater, opera. You mentioned that one of your proudest moments is when you performed the opera Powder Her Face by British composer Thomas Addis. That piece, which was written in 1995, demanded the most that you've ever had to do on the trumpet. How did you get to the point where you knew you could execute it really well?
Yes, that piece. I'll never forget it. It was the hardest piece I've ever had to perform. Very, very difficult. So many challenges with that. And I was so proud at the end. And I think I have to credit it to one of my professors in college who started a contemporary music ensemble. And it was really interesting. It almost opened up a new freedom for me because he allowed me to just go for it, make those crazy sounds and explore these weird techniques, and make them your own. And it's more about expression. When I first started all of those things, I was, from a classical standpoint, I'm asking him 1,000 questions on, how short is this thing, or how loud is this loud supposed to be? And he's like, don't think about that. Just create art and do it. And so that's what kind of sparked my interest in contemporary music. And again, I think it really prepared me for that piece because a player who had never played in contemporary ensembles before, this piece would basically freak anyone out. But I had a great time. The weirder, the better for me. I love all of those extended techniques. And it's just, I had to have confidence that I would do it. When I first got the piece, I instantly regretted signing up for it. But, it was a huge challenge, and I love challenges. And it's something that I'm used to from my life. You've got to make this happen. You can do it, and just put your heart into it and study, study, study.
Let's pause for a moment to think about this question. How have you prepared for a project that was a big stretch for you? Outside of hosting this podcast, I partner with leaders in the workplace to turn professional challenges into leadership successes and career progression. I love working with executive leaders, aspiring C-suite professionals, and of course, ampersands. If any of this sounds interesting to you, reach out to me at jessicawan.com. That's JESSICAWAN.com. Now, back to the show. You've worked on so many musicals. What's your favorite part of the process of being in a show?
You know, like I said earlier, I was on a symphony track. I wanted to do, Mahler every year and Petrushka and Mozart, whatever. That's what I thought I wanted to do. But in my recent years, I'm just having so much fun and loving the musicals because it's not so strict. It's not so refined. And like an Ampersand, it incorporates so many different skills that you have to have. It's not, classical helps, but there's a lot of jazz, there's swing, there's funk, there's all these genres in any given musical. And so I love that. I never like to be stuck in one box. And so doing the musicals, jumping around from genre to genre, different kinds of songs, having fun, it's generally very fun music. And so I'm really enjoying that. Again, I thought I wanted a symphonic career for a really long time. And now my interests are changing. There's a lot of music to be done, and I love doing it all. I mean, I've done gigs of all kinds, from all different genres. Now that my life is balanced with a job that I love that can pay for my rent, and thankfully it's still in the arts world, it gives me a new freedom for my music where I literally am having so much fun. It's no longer about work, making that paycheck or gaining status. It's just about having a great time. And I think it's really improved my playing. It's given me a freedom that I've never noticed before.
That's so wonderful. You mentioned that you've found some similarities between the restaurant environment and also some transferable skills between the food world and the music world. What have you learned, or what other similarities do you see between those two worlds?
I always thought about restaurant as sort of a bit of theater. You've got your servers coming out to you and greeting you and trying to sell you a beautiful meal. And, the presentation, every plate is made to look appealing, and the way they present it, I'm obviously think of some finer restaurants, but even in a fast casual place, you still have all of these things where it's a presentation, So with music as well, you're presenting this wonderful thing. People are here to enjoy it. They may not like it. They may love it.
2024 has been a big year for you. You got married. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
What are some things you've been reflecting on in a time of big personal change?
It's been a lot of big change in the recent past for me. It's not just that I got married. My parents passed away in
I'm sorry to
the
hear
last
that.
couple of years. Yeah, lots of big change there. And of course, my job, my career took a shift around that. COVID, of course, impacted all of us, but that really did change a lot for me. As a gigging freelance musician and a chef, both of those jobs dried up immediately. I ended up going back to my chef job at the hospice, and thank goodness for that, because it took a while for gigs to come back.
Yeah.
So I was doing cooking in the mornings for 1 or 2 years while gigs were still popping up and then disappearing because of a COVID outbreak or whatever. It's funny you ask, because at the current time, I'm reflecting on all of these huge life changes that have been happening. It's a whirlwind of emotions, but all in all, I'm really happy and grateful where things have landed today. And I'm excited about all of the things in the future. And I should be thinking about retirement, but I'm thinking about, what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years of my life. And, it keeps coming back. Don't want to open a restaurant. So you may see a new chapter in a few years. We'll see.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I also sense kind of shifting mindset around things like success or ambition. You alluded to it before, that you had a specific dream in mind as a musician, kind of in your 20s, early years. How has that dream shifted, and how would you define success now?
That's a great question, because defining success for me has changed, and it's morphed over the years. Like I said, my earlier dreams were to get a symphony job and go on tours with the symphony and teach at the university and all of that. And at some point I realized, well, this is a really tough road. It's taking a long time. When am I going to decide that, hey, this is not within easy reach anymore? So what are you going to do? I feel like it's changed so much. I can't even count how many times my drive and my dreams have changed. But what I found was really important is to take gratitude in whatever it is that you currently have and work towards something realistic. Still have those big dreams, but also be realistic and have your backup plan if needed. And don't be so brought down when disappointment happens or a roadblock pops up, because it's bound to.
When you think of all the work that you've taken on in the restaurant world and in the music world, what are some themes that tie them together?
In both worlds, you can't get the job done unless you're working as part of a team. Unless you're a soloist, of course. But even so, you still have to work with a conductor and an orchestra. Same goes in a restaurant, and if you were to think of it like theater or a performance, every night is a performance, and things can go horribly wrong or they can go smoothly and successfully. But no matter what, it takes teamwork and the ability to work well with others. And like music, you can have an orchestra, and they've got to be in sync. They've got to play together and be on the same page of where they're going to go with this. Same with the restaurants as well.
What advice do you have for people who are pursuing or thinking of pursuing an ampersand life?
I would say that if you're interested in creating this multifaceted life, that you really need to clearly decide on what you want to do and what your skill sets are, and put your mind to it. But also be realistic. Can you afford this choice? And don't be afraid of disappointment or failure. It's part of what makes you stronger. Because how else will you learn if you haven't failed at something before?
What a great answer. Through these interviews, we're co-creating the Ampersand Manifesto, Principles for Leading a Multi-Passionate Life. What do you think should be included in the manifesto?
I think it's important for people who are choosing this life to really think about where you're at and be grateful for what you have. And keep those dreams in sight, but be ready to pivot if needed. Mm-hmm. If things don't work out, or if your interests may change to the other direction, go for it, follow that, and enjoy it.
Jason, it's been such a delight talking with you. Folks, you can learn more about Jason on Instagram at @GoJasonPark. And we'll link to this in the show notes.
Thank you.
If you liked this show, hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends and fellow Ampersands. And if you're enjoying our show, please consider leaving a rating or a short review so that more people can find out about the show. I had a chance to listen back on my interview with Jason, and I wanted to share a few key takeaways. 1. Jason gave me so much to think about in terms of the big dream. One of my favorite musicals is Merrily We Roll Along by Stephen Sondheim, and in it there's a repeated phrase, "Dreams don't die, so keep an eye on your dreams." Jason was so driven by his dream to be a trumpeter in a big symphony. And while that specific version didn't come true, he's checked off so many things on his bucket list related to the trumpet. This brings me to point number 2. There is not better than here. I had a dream once of singing on the big opera stages or performing on Broadway, but I really had to ask myself, is that the life that I want, and would I be ready to make the real trade-offs? After college, I thought I might move to New York City and audition. I never moved, though, because I fell in love with a guy in San Francisco. And now, as a mom of a young child, I can clearly see for myself that, for me, there was not better than here. 3. I really resonated with what Jason shared about the creative freedom that comes with a day job. This has come up before in our interviews with musicians in particular, that having another side of your life that pays the bills and that you love helps to give flexibility, autonomy, and a sense of play for that creative side. Will you share the brownie recipe? You said there was no recipe.
It's a secret recipe, I'm afraid.